letter designers and lettering artists, we thrive in restrictions. We already have restrictions because we have to work within the alphabet. It needs to be readable, also an extra restriction. And then you have the client briefing, which is another set of restrictions. This is where I feel creativity grows and blooms.
All right, Martina, Rob, welcome to our new podcast. I'm super excited to finally have time to sit down, have some nice conversations, and invite our community to come into the studio. We've actually been here for a really long time. We've had Adobe Live, and I know, Martina, you're really familiar with Adobe Live from back in the day, and Rob too. So it's been, a mission of mine to revive the space and bring it back for our community to come in. And we've been asked for the last years to really, just bring back our natural kind of, homely conversations. And that's exactly what we're doing. So we have a busy schedule of episodes coming up in the next months and some surprises. The podcast is going to travel. So there'll be more to come. But this is our very first special episode. So Rob, super excited to do this with you. We've known each other for a really long time. So it feels like the right place and right time to start this. And I'm so excited about the guests that we're going to start receiving over the next weeks. But what are you excited about? What makes you excited
Absolutely.
about the podcast?
I'm super excited to have this because we were talking about this for a while to bring back conversational stories and talks about, creative journeys and inspiration, and not so much about which button to push, but rather like, how did you get there where you are, and what can you share with others, to inspire others. And in part, that's part of my job at Adobe now, being a creative for all my life, now transitioning into another life, which is sharing knowledge and bringing people together, bringing community together, sharing creative ideas, sharing also tool tips and technology tips, but mostly like really bringing people together as a community, as a creative community, which we all are. And this space and this format hopefully is just one more enabler that will help us do that. And I'm super happy to have a very special guest with us today. So I would say, hola Martina.
Hola Robert. Hola Emma.
And that's all I can say in Spanish, So that's about it. We have Martina Flor here. We're so excited to have her. And maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit more. I think better than I could ever do, probably.
I'm really excited to be here as well and finally meet you in person. We have worked together for so long in different projects, and now we get to chat for a long time. So my name is Martina Flor. I'm a lettering designer, author, educator. I studied as a generalist graphic designer, doing all kinds of things. And at some point, I discovered lettering design. And that changed everything for me. It really changed the course of my career. It allowed me to specialize, to really attract the kind of work that I wanted to do. And nowadays, I help other designers do the same and learn this skill set, which is I'm passionate about, and also build businesses around it. And I'm really excited to talk about creative journeys as well, because I think it's really important nowadays to show how the creatives that you follow on social media, that you admire, they get where they are. And it's normally a really long journey. And I think it's very important to realize that for many creatives out there that are starting out right now.
I agree, because again, there's not one single button that you have to push. There's not a magic button, and there's no shortcuts, right? Yeah. I mean, there is certain help, but you have to do the work, right? You have to invest the time and the energy. So I absolutely agree and admire that attitude. Now, before we get started, we already started, but like we usually have like a rapid fire section for our guests, right?
Yeah.
So just get into the mood and
I'm ready.
break the ice a little bit. Here we go. Layers named or unnamed?
Unnamed.
Ooh.
My work has a lot of layers, so I need to keep it together.
Okay. Coffee, tea, or chaos?
Tea. I like the the quietness around the idea of drinking tea, which is never the case of coffee. You're always trying to stay awake, or making yourself awake or something.
That's me.
Yeah,
that's when I come in.
I'm very quiet drinking coffee.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Half asleep, One European city that fuels your creativity.
Berlin. 100%.
Okay.
I love the mix. I love the chaos. I love the amount of people coming from everywhere. it keeps me awake, I would say.
I was expecting Barcelona from our chat just before because you spent some time there, but we can get into it.
Yeah.
Okay, one trend you're over.
Dancing on social media.
Wow. Okay.
And one trend you're excited about?
Well, I'm excited about seeing more and more creatives and artists and designers speaking about their work on social media and explaining their process, telling stories, which is kind of new. Like seeing artists and designers speaking and showing themselves in front of their work. I love that.
Solo creator or team energy?
Team energy, 100%. Whatever you do, great. When you have a team behind, is 10x.
Nice. Early bird or a late night creative?
I have no choice to be other than to be an early bird because I have 2 kids and routine is brutal. You have to wake up early. You have to send them to school, and I got used to this life.
I can relate. Work from home or an office or studio?
Oh, I have a studio, and I love to have a studio. I love to have that separation between home and workspace, a place where you go and just get creative. Yeah.
Cool. To wrap it up with the first section, the best creative advice you've ever received?
The best creative advice I ever received was from a teacher of mine, a type design teacher of mine. He is called Eric van Blokland. He's from the Netherlands. And he gave me the advice of always drawing my ideas first. I was always coming to him with all these ideas that I had on, I want to do this font and I want to design these letter forms and stuff. And I had all these ideas in my head. And he was always inviting me to just draw it first. When you draw it, you have that first draft that you can always improve, you can always polish, you can always grow into something else. But as long as you don't put it down on paper, it's just in your head.
And do you still do that today?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think it's such a lesson for life, I feel. Taking action, doing things, creating what I call prototypes of your ideas is really what makes you realize whether this is going to work or not. And then once you have that prototype, it becomes something. You can always polish it, but you can always grow it into something bigger. But as long as you don't have that prototype, it's just ideas, ideas without implementation, without taking action. They're just ideas.
Yeah, ideas. There's like a saying, like ideas are fantasies as long as you're not doing the first step or something like this. Like, I'm not quite sure.
It sounds great.
Yeah. But it's like, but
it could become your quote.
But that's the whole point, right? And I can totally relate to it because so many times I feel very similar to that. Like I have an idea in my mind. I have an idea in my mind that I would like to get out there, and sometimes I just either forget or too lazy or the moment was not right or any other excuse not to write it down. And I tend to procrastinate a lot, which I think is normal for a lot of creatives. That you push it away, like, okay, I'll start tomorrow, and then it's always easier as soon as you have it could even be as simple as, if you're talking digital, just creating that first composition, that first Premiere file or first After Effects file, a starting point, something, to have. We always talk about the blank canvas, but first of all, have a canvas that forces you to actually start to draw and start to write or do whatever you are doing in the creative field. But that do this first step. As soon as you do this, as soon as you do this first step, the next step almost becomes automatic.
Yeah. I like the idea of starting point because it's a transition to my first questions and I feel like, Martina, you were saying this, but we've known each other for some time and you've been in the Adobe world for quite a while, but your starting point is super interesting because you're actually from Argentina and then you moved to Berlin, and I feel like that's something I can relate to as well. But keen to know what your kind of journey was, how you ended up here, and what the starting point was for you, even if it wasn't just on paper, but what got you started and how you ended up here as well.
Yeah. So I studied in Argentina. So I as I said, I'm originally a graphic designer, and I remember that I finished art school and I started, I became pretty quickly, so I kind of climbed up the ladder of this graphic design, and I became a creative director pretty quickly. In my early 20s, I was a creative director. I had a team, and I wasn't happy with my job. I felt like all the creative life that I wanted to pursue was not really part of my work. So I had this day job, and then every night when I was coming from my day job, I would sit down. I would prepare some coffee, and I would sit down to draw.
Coffee back then?
Coffee now, yeah, no. We're very
to stay
attentive.
Awake, to stay awake. and then I would just draw. I would draw different things, and one of those things were letterforms. At that time, I didn't have any idea that what I was doing was lettering, because it didn't have a name. It wasn't a thing, lettering, as it is right now. And at some point, I started to ask myself, what if these 2 hours that I enjoy very much every day will become my entire day? What if this would expand into the rest of the day and people would pay me for doing this? And that question led me to I didn't have the confidence in my work yet to charge for it. So I decided to double down on going deeper into developing my skills. And at that time, for me, that meant moving countries, signing up for a type design course in the Netherlands, leaving my apartment, my job, my boyfriend at that time, and just moving abroad to pursue this course in type design. And that was such a great decision that changed everything, because in that experience I found like the perfect overlap between the two things that I loved, which was design, which was my background, the things that I had learned, and also creativity and expression, self-expression. I always say that drawing letter forms is really the perfect overlap between systems, and you can always bring your voice into that. Systems, because you're not just drawing anything. You're drawing an alphabet. You're drawing letter forms. They need to be readable. They need to, they need to form words. And you can bring your own voice, your own creativity, your own expression onto what you're doing. And I found that overlap, and I never want to leave it. And then after that, I decided to move to Berlin and launch my career as a lettering designer.
When was that? When did you move to Berlin?
It was in 2010, in 2009, in 2010, I think.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it was 16 years ago. Yeah.
Wow.
It's really interesting, because Berlin, we were just talking about this before, but it feels like Berlin is this place of transition, and you stayed there for 15 years. And I think that's the right question of what kept you going? How did you settle and build roots into Berlin? And I think there's a whole creative bubble around it. And I think that's maybe what hooked you on, but so interested to see what that means for you and how you landed on Berlin specifically.
Yeah. Well, at that time, there was a very big, small typographic community. And I feel that was really key for me, to insert myself in a community where there were people doing work that I wanted to do, and seeing other people making a living out of drawing letter forms for me was super inspiring. I thought if they can do that, I can do that too, right? And that made it all possible for me. And that community meant a lot for me, and also in terms of lifting me up and inviting me to events, because I was the new South American girl who just moved to Berlin. And I feel that also Berlin shaped me in a way. If I look at my body of work now, I feel like there's some of the the systems that we associate with German culture, and the systems, the order, and
everything
the polish. And then at the same time, I brought all my, all my Latin American culture onto what I do, the decorative elements, the colorful color schemes that I use. And I feel now looking at my work, I feel all of these things come together. I feel that Berlin shaped me in a lot of senses, and also I was able to bring my own culture onto what I do. Yeah.
No, it's interesting, because I just had so many flashbacks to my time when I studied communication design.
Yeah.
And so I have a very strong basic education about typography, letterpress and all that. I mean, my typography professor, like a Swiss guy, super good at typography. He wanted to teach us how to properly do work with letters, actually really set letter by letter and space by space, and really understand what is how kerning works, how spaces work, and how a relationship between empty space and typography. That helped me so much to get not just an appreciation for typography and good typography, but also helped me to really understand visually how a picture flows better and how a composition works better. And of course, it also helped like in the long run, like when I became a motion graphics designer, like to have like a good sense for how to animate type, because I just love type.
Yeah.
Now, when you said like how you draw and everything, that reminded me of something that we had to do. Like one of the things that he set out us to do was like actually draw almost like arty images with letters, but we should actually draw the letters by hand, like really like if it's like a serif font, for example, you really have to be very careful. And in a way, I realized that when it's almost like writing something down, as you mentioned in the beginning, you write something down, it just is ingested more into your system, because people always say you learn faster when you write down what you have to learn, right? Because you all of a sudden you just didn't just read it, but you also manifested it onto a piece of paper. And I feel the same is true for fonts and typography and for letters and everything, that when you draw a letter, you have like a completely different relationship to the shape, because you really focus on like, what are the proportions from big to small, and or how do you like, do you have like a special, what's your take on that, basically?
Martina, your eyes are shining. I feel like this is all your language.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I think that it's very interesting, because I feel like a lot of people and a lot of designers and creatives watching and listening to this podcast may feel like typography is a little bit of a science. Type design and letter design is a little bit of a science. It's only like only a few people can do it. But
choose a preset.
Yeah, exactly. Or only like a few like gifted people can do it very well, and actually it's something that anybody can learn. But also I always say that you know more about typography than you think you do. If there's one thing that we all deal with all the time is language, and therefore letter forms. We use typography to send texts on WhatsApp. We write emails with typography. We're dealing with fonts all the time, the products you eat, the books you read, right? So if I tell you now, draw me an N, you will know exactly how to draw it, and you will know how to draw it in a few styles. You will do it. You can draw an N bubbly, serif, or sans serif, right? So anybody can really relate to a letter form, and we all know more about typography than we think we do. And of course, there is a system behind it, and once you understand that system, like a world of possibilities open up for you, because as I said, there is this system which is actually pretty simple to understand, and once you approach that system, you can bring your own creativity to it, and you can bring also your own stories to tell. Something important about typography is that you're telling stories with letter forms. By shaping a word or a couple of words, you are telling a story through that shape, beyond the literal meaning of the words. And that's what's fascinating about typography, that it's like it really influences how we feel, what we trust, the things that we believe, right? Just by shaping the words. And that's like what fascinates me.
Imagine your logo, like your studio Martina Flor, in the Comic Sans.
Yeah.
Like, it hurts.
Yes, it hurts.
Yeah.
Like what does that communicate to versus using like a grotesque font, or something that is more and more advanced or more professional looking.
Totally. I mean, with as letter designers, we work with the stories that each one of us has built in their minds. We all associate geometry with rationality and something that is clean and orderly. We associate letter forms that have serifs with the Roman Empire, so that also wakes up other stories. We associate connected letter forms with handwriting, and that makes us feel like it's something closer, more human, right? So there's these stories. We all have these stories in our minds. We have been reading letters since childhood, and we as letter designers and a lettering designer like me, I work with those stories, and I shape the letters in a way that will wake up those stories in your mind.
I think it's super interesting, because I think you were mentioning systems, but I'm more coming, like you were mentioning a few times, childhood, I like associate like that to writing and how fun it is, and like that childlike learning how to write for the first time. I remember that vividly from school, and we were always taught to like tie together the letters, and like the way, you know, we were being taught to write in general in France at least. And I know you have children, so it must be fascinating to like also play with like letters with your kids as well.
Yeah.
And I'm also interested to hear more on, like you were mentioning stories a few times, but what stories specifically for you are you like building through lettering? Is there any like favorite story, or what does that look like for you?
Well, oftentimes, you know, as a lettering designer, you're oftentimes working with a brief, and that brief normally comes from a client. And what your job as a lettering designer is to take that brief and translate it into letter forms, right? So what I would normally do is to go through that brief or have that call with a client, and understand what are the keywords, what are the stories that we need to tell, and then translate that into letter forms. So oftentimes that story is given by a briefing, which I always find a blessing. You know, whenever a client comes to me and tells me like, you can do whatever you want, it's like, it could be anything, you know, I don't know where to start.
Yeah, because
So
it's limitless, right? So you need to set like certain...
And I always say that letter designers and lettering artists, we thrive in restrictions. You know, the more restrictions you give us, we already have restrictions because we have to work within the alphabet. That's already a bunch of restriction. It needs to be readable. That's already also an extra restriction. And then you have the client briefing, which is another set of restrictions. And I, you know, this is where I feel creativity grows and blooms, when you have a certain set of restrictions and you have to work with what you have. If someone gives you pasta and marshmallows and they tell you build a house, you would just have to work with that. But if they tell you like build a house with whatever you find out there, it's like it's gonna be a Frankenstein.
Like, what do I use?
What do I do? Right? So I think restrictions are really important. And in terms of, you know, the story that you want to tell as a lettering designer, oftentimes that is given. I love about my job and my craft that you can lean more towards the design side of it, or to the artistic side of it. So oftentimes there will be a client that will come and tell you like, hey, redesign our logotype. And you will have to bring all your expertise in shaping letter forms, in telling stories through those letter forms into that assignment. And sometimes they will come to you and they will want you to do your thing. So to bring your style and your voice onto the assignment. That is often the case of a book cover, right? And then the assignment becomes a bit more artistic, where you're bringing not only your expertise, but also your voice, your expression. And that's also something nice about this specific craft and job, that you can play and pivot from one side to the other.
Speaking of craft, it just occurred to me, like when we speak about craft and also technology, you know, like especially about like modern fonts, you know, like for example, open type fonts. And fonts came a long way, you know, back then, like going from true type fonts, which was like very, like almost like a dumb font, you know, like it is what it is, to open type, and now even variable fonts.
Yeah.
You know, like how do you, like for me, I'm more like a consumer, you know, as a, like I never figured to create, for example, my own font. It's actually something that I really toyed with the idea, but never really actually did. But again, limits. Now, variable fonts is almost like limitless again. How do you how do you see like variable fonts and open type and all the options that you have with modern fonts? Like, what does it like? How do you tackle all the possibilities that you have? And do you set limits if you, for example, work with fonts like this, or do you just play freely with it, or how do you?
Well, it's interesting. As a lettering designer, I mostly draw a single set of words. So, and this is interesting for your audience and your listeners. There's a difference between type design, font design, and lettering design.
Yeah.
So lettering is all about drawing letter forms, and usually you have to draw a set of words or a word, for instance, a logotype, or a set of words if you're designing a book cover. And in the case of font design, you're designing a system.
The whole alphabet.
You're designing the whole alphabet where all, you're kind of designing Lego pieces where all possible combinations need to work. So you are designing a digital tool that people can install in their computer or in their phones, and they can write with it, right? And all possible combinations, all words need to be readable, right? And that is really an expertise that you can, if you're a letter designer and you go down the path of font design, you will be doing fonts. And this is the path that I didn't go down. I went down towards the path of lettering design.
But did you design like a font?
I have designed fonts, but it's not my expertise. I didn't go deeper into that, but it's a world that I know. I actually entered the world of letter design through the door of type design.
Right.
And at some point I decided I don't like to design fonts that a lot of people can use. I have done a few, but I prefer to create this custom work where I'm telling stories through the designs, the illustrations that I do with letterforms. Yeah, but it's an entire world, really.
But do you actually, like, for example, like how much do you design based upon an existing font? Like how much do you vary that? Because I think there's also limits that you can do to change the font, because if you do like a design for a client that wants a very specific design, like they say like, okay, it has to be based on the Helvetica, but of course you can't just take Helvetica and change it. But in some ways, yes, you can still add to that. So I think it's super complicated and tricky. How do you go about that?
We lettering designers, we start from scratch.
From scratch.
We start with a blank paper.
Okay.
And we rarely use fonts. We rarely use fonts in our work.
So it's like a completely...
It's a completely
interesting.
Design from scratch. So you will start with a blank sheet of paper, and you will start from scratch doing your first lines and stuff, and you may incorporate fonts just to complete the layout or something, but we always tease font designers saying that
they already have something to
some listeners are going to be
exactly
triggered.
So, we design everything from scratch. It's like an illustration but with letterforms.
I'm interested to know, because I know teaching is a big part of what you do as well, like how do you start teaching lettering, and is it like the scratch blank canvas like you're saying, and like how do you tackle that in general?
I love this question because as I mentioned before, we know about letters more than we think, and we are surrounded by letters all the time. So the place to start for me is always by looking at typography around you, by developing what I call your typographic eye. So I love inviting other designers always to, and I do that also on my social media account. Sometimes I walk on the streets and I see a sign, and then I will make a video analyzing, what are the things that you can notice, or what are the things that I would change. And I think this is the way where you can start. Just looking at what you have around and being critical at it, and thinking, why did the person who designed this did it that way? Or look at that spacing, and maybe I will do it a little bit tighter or a little bit wider, right? So this is the biggest tool that you have as a letter designer is your eye, your observation skills. If you develop your observation skills with other or someone else's work, you can then apply it to your own work, and you become like the mentor of your own work, right? You can then look at what you do and say I would change the composition here. I would move this around. And this is where I will always start. And then, of course, the drawing, this idea of the prototype that we were talking right at the beginning, this also applies to your work. So, for instance, when creating my work, I start with that prototype. I start with those small sketches, and I try to define, okay, is this the direction? Is that one the direction? I never start with the final artwork. I never start with the Adobe Illustrator file, Untitled one. I always start with small thumbnail sketches. I just try to identify which one is the direction, and then I take that farther. I start to polish that.
And then the named layers come in.
And then this is
But
what
not at the beginning.
exactly.
Full circle.
Yes, yeah. But the idea of prototype also applies to the work, and this is also something that I try to pass on to the designers that I work with. Don't try to get it right from the beginning. Start with the small thumbnail sketches. If you're working with a client, you can get feedback from the client early on, and then develop from that. Yeah.
Coming back to a little bit more like playing with your question, about teaching versus actually creating. Because for me personally, I always were like two hearts in my body, basically. Like the one that is like the creative Robert, and the other one is like the teaching and the presenting Rob. Like what we do right now. Like sharing information, going out, showing stuff, how it's done. What, like, do you think your story on like when you were did that course, for example, it helped you tremendously, right? As you said in the beginning. Yeah. So do you think there's deep down in yourself something that wants to give back to the community because you received this treat of getting help when you needed help?
Oh yeah.
Is that something that, or
you're reading my heart? Yes. I mean, if I look back at my own journey, learning was really pivotal in my life. If you think about the story that I just told you about how, I left my home country and I moved overseas to pursue a program, and that changed the course of my career. And later on, I continued to do it in other ways. When I already had a creative business, I hired a coach to teach me how to deal with the business stuff. And then later I signed up for a mastermind, and later, all really in my path, learning has been really pivotal. It has really taken me from one layer to the next one. And this is why I feel so strongly about sharing what I know and what I have learned with others, because I know that, whatever I have learned in my own journey can pave the way for others. And that's so powerful. It was so powerful in my own life. And I think there's some element of that. And that had such a big impact in my own life that, it makes a lot of sense for me right now to have a membership for designers and help them learn the skill of drawing letter forms and building their businesses, or having a program that also helps designers learn the art and business of lettering. I think there's for sure an element that want to pass on that power onto new creatives. Yeah.
And aside from teaching, what did the students and designers teach you? Like, did you feel like you also learned something from that experience that was surprising to you, or do you still today? Because I feel like seeing things through the eyes of someone else who's doing it for the first time can be really impactful as well. So I'm curious to know if you learned anything through that journey.
Through the journey of learning from
teaching to others.
Oh, for sure. I think this is super interesting. I think that everybody, every expert, everybody who has found their thing and, are passionate about something and are really good at something, to some extent, they should be teaching what they know. And I always say that experts will, to some extent, be teaching their clients, their audience around the value of what they do, about how they do it. I think it has a big power to just pass on what you know, what you have learned, because it just raises the level of the entire industry, right? And also because it crystallizes something that is second nature for you. It crystallizes that into a piece of knowledge. Until you don't put it in words, until you don't put it down on paper, it's really something that you just feel that you do it naturally or is second nature to you. But actually, there is a thought behind it. There is a system that you have created. And when you put that into words, you realize like, oh, I know more about this than I thought I would. Yeah. For instance, when I wrote my first book, The Golden Secrets of Lettering, I remember that my editor at that time, he was proposing me, or he was coming to me with questions like, hey, can you write about this element, or can you write about this aspect of drawing letter forms? And it was like, in the beginning, I was like, well, I don't know how this is done, but oh yeah, actually I know. And I have a system for that. And then you put it out on paper, which in my case was a book. But you can do it also in the shape of an Instagram reel. You can do it in the shape of a podcast. You can do it in the shape of a blog post. But, I think there's power for you and for others when you put down certain knowledge, certain thing that for you is second nature, onto paper, onto a format that other people can, that you can pass on to other people.
Now I think it's incredibly valuable, like in the bigger meaning, like because you pass it on to others and others are learning from that, but also for yourself, right? Like you mentioned. And one thing that I remember so vividly, a couple of years ago, I gave courses in university, like being like a guest lecturer, not a professor, but like being like a guest lecturer, coming and teaching some students some things. And like I remember very vividly, like the first couple of lessons that I had to give, like, okay, I know this, okay, no problem, but okay, hang on, how was this again? And I need to like, and I had certain gaps, and I had to learn in order to teach.
Interesting. And you're responsible as well. So
exactly, because I was always afraid of going in and looking like you don't know any topic about I don't know, like whatever keyframes, for example, but
and once you do it, you feel so confident about
exactly,
yourself.
yeah.
And so that's what I mean, that it's also like it pays back, because it's like you realize that you know more than you think. There's a lot of things that we do naturally that we feel they are second nature or they are intuitive, but actually they're not. These are things that you have learned. You have developed little systems to do that thing, and those are the things that you need to bring onto paper, onto a piece of content. Yeah.
I think one of the enemies of that is the imposter syndrome that
I was going to say, what is if we had to summarize it in one word, is it confidence and lack of confidence, or because imposter syndrome reminds me of that.
It's totally something that I felt and still feel. Like every time I speak to someone, I feel like, oh my God, this person is like, like when I speak to someone that is from the same field and admire his or her work, I just go like, oh my God, I just suck so badly at whatever I do. And then, in a way, it is bad, but it's also good because you never stop to look, you never stop trying to improve. And you never are tired of learning.
Yeah.
So that I think in a way it's healthy. To a certain extent, until it becomes unhealthy, of course.
As long as it doesn't stop you from doing things, right?
That's a good point.
And, I'm coming back to the idea of the prototype. The first time you do it, it will probably suck. That's okay. And the second time, it will be much better because you have that experience. And this is how this prototype, this first test becomes into, turns into something. So the imposter syndrome is going to be there every time you do something new. But I think it's really encouraging to know that at the end of the journey, there's something for you to gain, to learn from that. And also there's a lot of confidence coming back to you. Yeah.
And I think that's when sometimes that has to be external, which is what you do, which is like mentorship. Like someone has to give you that extra push. And I feel like we've done a lot of that in the last years, where it's incredible what a small, even like a line or an encouragement can do to like designers or people in the field. And I think it was really interesting you were mentioning, Rob, like people you admire. Like I wonder, Martina, if there's like also people you admire that could be like super interesting and we just don't know of. Like, do you have top of mind, like, names or people specifically that you still admire in the industry or more broadly?
Well, I admire Ken Barber, who is an American lettering artist. And I have a pretty interesting story with Ken Barber, which is like when I was studying back in that time when I was in this course in the Netherlands, he came by chance. He came to teach a workshop, a lettering workshop. And I remember that first I learned a lot from that workshop, but also it was the first time, he not only taught that workshop, but he also made a presentation of his work. So he showed all the things that he had done, which is like an amazing body of work. And I remember that it was the first time that I said, like, I want to do what he does, and it stayed with me because the years after that, I tried to become Ken Barber, but I ended up being myself, by trying to pursue the path that he had followed. I found my own path. And I think it's so important to have those role models in your life, to have someone that you can look up to, and that you feel a little bit uncomfortable around, as you said before, like that when you see them, you're like, I don't know if I can sit next to you because you're too good. But I think it's really important to have that those role models, because they show you the North Star, and in the path of trying to be like them, you find out who you are, you find out what is it that you do great, and you find your own voice. Yeah.
I love that. Now, one thing that really struck me quite late, unfortunately, in my career before joining Adobe, when I was running my own studio and my own business, is something that I would like to ask how you tackled that, because I find it very interesting to talk about this. And is we as artists, as creatives, are way too often not figuring out the business side of things.
Yeah.
That's something, I became friends with Chris Do like a couple of years ago. I followed his work like for many years. I always admired his take on how to advise people to take the business side more seriously, be more responsible about how you monetize your work and see the value of your work. For me, it was always like, I just wanted to create. Technically, I said for many years, I would even create for free, just because it's so much fun, because I love it so much. And yes, you can do it to a certain extent. But as soon as you have to cover expenses, rent, feed kids, have family, you can't do it for free, and you can't do it for too little money. Yet, personally, I believe in university and in school, for sure, as well, we are taught way too less of the business side of things, the economic side of things. Like we always say, like, oh yeah, be creative, do this, do that. But the whole other part, which is equally as important, like I think you mentioned you did a course on that as well, or how did you learn that, and at what point did you understand the importance of this aspect?
Yeah, that's so important. I feel like, I always say that your work is your superpower. So this is the product that you sell. This is what, this is the product that you bring to the world and you want to sell. But that's half of the equation. You need to make that product get to people. You need to find people who want to buy your product. In our case, is our creativity, is the artwork that we create. And I feel like, creatives, we enjoy the creative work very much, and we want to live in that bubble. And oftentimes we forget that if we stay in that bubble and we forget about the business side of things, the real risk is that you won't be able to support yourself to continue doing the work you love. So that's a real risk. And I think it's a good way of putting it, because that makes you realize, like, I also need to pay attention to this. As a creative, I also need to pay attention to marketing myself, to promoting my work, because the risk, if I don't do that, the risk is that I will stop doing the work that I love. So as you, I didn't learn the business side of things in art school. And I learned it through first starting my own business and realizing the complexity of that, all that goes into, not only doing the creative work, but also acquiring clients and invoicing and making your paperwork and all that stuff.
How fun.
So at some point, I realized that I needed to have some preparation, specifically when my first kid came to the world. I remember that at that time, what I would do before my first kid came to the world, what I would do to compensate my lack of preparation in the business side of things was to just put in more time. I would just stay up late and doing more work or working until 2 a.m. in the morning, because I could do it. But then when I had my first kid, I realized, like, I cannot continue doing this. I need to put some structure into this. I need to bring some knowledge that helps me organize this. And that was really transformative. That was really transformative. After I hired my first coach, I also hired my first team member, and I started to build a team. I started to build systems around what I was doing, because it's so important also to pass it on to someone else, to understand how is it that you do it, to put it down on paper and tell to someone, hey, can you do this for me? Because I'm going to take care of that.
Yeah.
So that was really, it really was a leap for me. And this is why I continue to train myself in the business side of things through masterminds and coaching programs, especially now that, it's not just myself in my company. I work with a team, and I feel really responsible for,
Totally.
them to also count on what we do, on the success of what we do. So it's like I feel that I build my business family, and I'm responsible for them. So I need to step up as a leader, as a CEO of my company, and that what to make that leap. Only education can help you. Only training, only learning can help you. So yeah.
Was there a moment in time where you felt like, that's it, I've managed to set my business, it's running, and I've managed to land the promotional opportunity or the speaking gig that really got you to accelerate, or to get the more attention, whether that's online or in person? Or was there a specific moment in time or a specific year where you felt like, I can finally breathe and this is running and I can lead this business now?
Yes. So I had a few instances in my business. So right now, for instance, last year, I've been in business for 15 years. So it's been a journey. Thank you. It's been a journey. And also there has been so many different transitions within a creative business. I always say that, when you build a creative business, you're kind of building also a playground where you bring in your creativity and your vision, and your vision changes throughout times. The vision that I have nowadays is not the same that I had 10 years ago. And having that playground allows you to, change and shift things around. And last year, it was one of the years that I sat down with my team and I told them thank you. This was a year where I felt that I was, working in my genius zone, and I was doing the thing, and it makes me a little bit emotional, but I was doing the thing that I feel like I was born to do, I was doing the thing that I'm best at. I was going at conferences. I was getting on stages. I was talking at podcasts. I was, doing, going out there, talking to people, inspiring others, sharing what I know. And I felt that I could leave the operations of my business and I could trust that on them, so that we can go out there and find the right people to work with. And yes, I had moments like this in my business, but last year was the first year where I thought ooh,
gold moment.
I have the best team ever. They know exactly what we are doing, and I can operate in my best self. And in the thing that I can do the best,
because you trust, and everything is running, and you have this level of mutual trust and respect in a team environment. How many people are working?
I have 4 team members right now, and we are all working remote. My husband is also part of the business now. He's taking care of the finances, which is great to have that in the hands of someone I trust.
Yeah, 100%.
And also in the hands of someone I trust.
Nice.
Yes, we are 4 team members, and yes, it's been a work of years to build a team, to also build the systems so that everybody knows how things are done, and everybody knows what is their part. And you work as a team. You know exactly that when you can trust your team, when you can pass on things to other people, when you can support each other, when one of you is under the weather,
and we have
yes, you know how it is, and it's such a gift when you have the right team. It's
but to be completely honest, it was one of my personal biggest learnings to actually accept others into my creative.
Do you mean as part of Adobe or before that?
No,
when you
before
had your
that,
studio?
before that. No, at
Yeah.
joining Adobe, I was like already like team, you know, like
Give me all the team members.
no, yeah, but I remember very, very, very vividly the time where I honestly had the goal and maybe also a little bit the impression to be able to know every tool. You know, like I was hungry to learn about typography. I could always draw. I wanted to learn photography, cinematography. I wanted to learn 3D, texturing, lighting, modeling, everything. In parts, yes, I can do almost everything, you know, to a certain extent, because that drive helped me to at least dip my toes into those fields, and that helped me tremendously to have a bigger understanding of when I talk to people about, you know, a project, and it's not just like a theoretical thing, but you can actually, you know, help and understand better and communicate better with others. Oh, this needs to be done, blah blah blah. But at one point, I just felt like, oh my God, this is too much. I can't do all of that to the level I want to do, because there's only a few things that I'm really good at. And at that point, I realized, oh damn, I need to get help. Like I need to bring someone on board to help with, you know, setting up lights, or, you know, someone that is even better at operating a camera, or someone like, for example, sound. For me, I'm more into the video and motion graphics side of things, but for example, sound design and audio engineers, they have like a whole different take. Like everything that we know about the visual part, they know about the audio part. They know frequencies and all that, and they can turn your okay to good sounding audio into amazing sounding audio, right? So that was the moment when I realized, oh, hang on, actually bringing someone else on board is not a confession of weakness, but rather a confession of strength, and saying like, okay, I admit I can't do that, but you are way better, you know, at letter design than I am.
Yeah.
You know, of course I can draw, but, you know, obviously that's your profession and you're better than that. So why should I spend triple the time to do something way worse than you can do it in, you know, like 1/3 of the time, right?
Totally. And I think that that's the biggest challenge it's one of the biggest challenge for creatives and designers, because there's a certain level of authorship that we have in our work, and we cannot imagine someone else doing that work the same way that we do it.
Yeah.
And probably if you bring someone into the team doing an element of the work that you do, probably they won't do it exactly like you do it, but still they will take a lot of work out of your plate so that you can focus on what you do best.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest shift you need to make as a creative, to realize that you can give up part of that work and let others do that part, so that you can focus on what you do the best. And for me, that was also a process. I remember that my first employee was someone doing the administrative work, which at that time was my babysitter. So when when I decided to hire someone to do the paperwork in my studio, I remember that I saw in her the qualities that I was looking for in someone taking care of that, which was like, she was organized, she was timely, and I asked her, hey, if I teach you how to do this, because up until that time I had done it myself, and most of the things that I have delegated in my experience as a business owner, I have done them myself, including taking out the trash. So anything that needs to be done in the business, I have done it, and I can pass it on to someone. So my first hire was that. Was an administrative assistant. And later on, I brought in a designer who was doing part of my work, of the artwork. And what I did in order to, keep on feeling that I had certain authorship in the work, is I separated my process into stages. And I understood, okay, what are the stages of my creative process that need to be necessarily done by me, and what are the others that I don't need to necessarily put my hands on in order to keep ownership of what I'm doing. And there's so much in that creative process that I didn't need to do, and that freed a lot of time and a lot of energy for me to be able to develop the business and to grow the team.
That's
and,
super interesting.
do new projects. So that's nowadays I wouldn't do without a team. And back in the days, I wouldn't imagine working with other people, putting hands on what I was doing. So yeah, it's a big shift, but it's worthwhile.
And it's interesting because in both of what you were saying, I hear like focus as like one of the things. Like you were saying, I could do all of these things, and like we've been speaking at or I have, at least in the last like 7 years, to like community, on a regular basis, and that's a theme that always comes up, which is like, I'm so passionate and I want to be doing all of these things, and then it's like, how do you regroup and then focus and try and do like start with one thing you can do well, and then branch out if you need to, or break down that process. I find that really interesting. And speaking to creatives, we also hear hundreds of different ways of working, and it's incredible. And some, we've been hearing a couple of months back, we met some community leaders who were telling us like, I just use my note app and that's how I spot things that are happening in my environment. And others were like, I've created like an AI build process to like track like content that goes out in like all channels and not even mine. And they've created a very, elaborate process and automated that to make it more efficient for them. And I love hearing all the like diversity of how that can be done, and it can be successful and work. So everyone's finding their own way. But focus for me is really interesting because I find that the creative industry is changing so much. So what is your advice, and how are you dealing with like creative change and industry changing and still focusing on what you do, and just what you enjoy but also need to do? I think it's a really interesting
because there's so many new things to learn. There are so many creative outlets that you can pursue, and I think that in the last years, I feel like throughout my career I have learned about the power of focus. I feel like early in my career, it was a lot about trying different things. And I'm grateful of that drive that I had back then, because I could try a lot of different things, outlets for my creativity in creating a product line, writing books, creating online classes, creating in-person classes. I did all you can imagine with my expertise as a lettering designer. And I feel that nowadays it's more about understanding, what are the things where I want to put my energy on, and what are the things that, because I put all my focus and my energy in, they will grow into something bigger. So I think that's a process that I have gone through in the past years, testing different things and then realizing, well, that's interesting, but perhaps it's not for me. And that's interesting as well. But, it's not what I'm passionate about. And then when you put all your energy, all your focus onto something, that's what makes it grow and makes it powerful. Yeah.
Looking into the future, is there something specific you are clear on, like you haven't tried yet and that you really want to do? I feel like recently I saw you did something for TED and TEDx, and that was a big moment for you. Is that like, did you check a box there, and what's next? Like, is there something that you're really excited where you were like, I haven't tested that, and that's a great area where you're excited?
Yeah, so the story that you're talking about is that I recently took part of the TED Global Idea Search, which was an initiative of TED Talks where they went through different regions of the world, and they out of 10 speakers, they selected one speaker to go on to the main stage, and I participated in this round.
No pressure.
No pressure. You had
Survival.
like 6 minutes to go on stage and deliver your talk, which was super challenging, but at the same time, like, it was such a life-changing experience, because it's like you have to condense 15 years of work onto a 6-minute talk, and that was super interesting, super challenging. It was a roller coaster of emotions, and I feel that those situations put me on the edge of like what I feel comfortable doing, and I love like pushing those limits in that sense. You see me now like speaking to you on a podcast, but I used to be very introvert, and I used to have a stage fright, and by putting myself in these situations where I'm pushing the limits of what I feel comfortable doing, I have achieved things like coming here and talking to you and having this amazing conversation. So when I look into the future, I'm looking forward to continue helping other creatives. I feel like, being in situations like this where you can show others the real person behind the work behind a creative journey. Having a community of members that I can continue to mentor. This is what I'm really looking forward to, and it's something that also pushes my limits, because sometimes I get asked questions that I don't know how to answer, and again I have to search inside me and understand how I do things, and then put that on words. So I think that's what's gonna continue pushing my limits, and what I'm looking forward to continue doing. Yeah.
Before we wrap it up, like one thing that I would like to personally ask you is how do you manage work-life balance? I mean, you're a mother of how many kids?
I am a mother of two.
Yeah, same here. I have 2 kids as well.
Yeah.
How do you it is hard, right? I mean, this is like the biggest life-changing moment to have 1 and even 2 kids. Like, how do you manage time and work and family? Obviously you're very structured in systems. This is a very big role in your life. So I guess that's one
How many
of part
times
of
I say systems today? I think
23 times. No, but does that take play part in your daily structure, or how do you go about your how do you organize your day with kids and everything?
Well, I get a lot of help. That's what I always say. Although you see me on podcasts, on videos, on social media, like I have a team of people working behind me that do the daily work, and I get a lot of help at work and at home, and at the same time, having kids for me was the best productivity hack that I could have. It pushed me to organize myself, to be really productive when I'm at work, to partition my time to make it efficient and make it work.
You have 4 hours. Use them.
Yes, seriously.
4 sounds generous. Martina's thinking.
I remember that I wrote my first book when I had my what I was nurturing my first son. Like I signed the contract for my first book with the publisher a month before I had my first child, and I wrote the book in the next months. And I feel that really, having my kid in my lap really pushed me to make the best out of that time. It was like, okay, now I have half an hour. I'm gonna write 30 pages of that book, and I'm gonna get it done. And I feel that having those restrictions in my life, in a way, those restrictions of time, of okay, now I need to take kids to school, now I need to take them to bed, that really made my life thrive, and it helped me achieve a lot of things that I don't know if I would have achieved if I wouldn't have had those restrictions. At the same time, work-life balance is for me, it's part of everything is part of life, really. I find myself sometimes thinking about an idea, a project while I'm with my kids, and that happens.
And you can't help it, right? I mean, that's how the creative mind works.
Exactly. Yeah. And I also find myself thinking about my kids when I'm, I don't know, in a call or recording a podcast, so that is just one flow, and creativity and my business and my life happens to be part of one thing. And that's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What great words to end on. That's amazing.
I think it was super, super inspiring, because, like one of the reasons we're doing this, at least why I'm doing this is because I also want to learn, I never want to stop learning and hearing things that help me in a way, to improve upon this, or to change this or change that, so
I think for it, you just want to continue on that. I think for me, it's the support piece, which I really related in everything that you shared. And I know we're working together on a partnership as well on your next lettering seminar, which I'm really excited about, and just ways we can extend support to more and more people in the industry. And I just find that that's my spark the last, or at least through my journey at Adobe. So it's been amazing to hear how that comes up in your life and how important it is for you in the future too. So yeah, more of this, more conversations. I mean, what a great first episode.
Yes. And Martina, if people who may not know you, I mean, there might be people that do not know you,
For sure, yeah.
How can they find you? Maybe you can tell them. You can also look into the camera and say where where they can find out about you and your whatever you're doing. Like you also have a podcast, I know.
Oh, yeah.
I saw and heard parts of an episode. I think it was with James Bernard, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Great. James is great.
Yeah, I love also telling stories and giving the stage to other creatives to tell their story. I think it's so important to unveil what's happening behind the scenes. So you can find me on Instagram. You will see a lot of content on lettering design and how to design letter forms. And you will see me also analyzing typography in the wild, which is also very fun. You can listen to my podcast, Open Studio. And you can also find me on YouTube now, youtube.com/Martina Flor Academy. Our podcast also gets published there, and we also deliver content on letter design.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was
Thank
so
you
much
for
fun.
being with
So
us.
much.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Martina. And then we'll be back with weekly episodes. So we're really excited to have more over the next weeks. And I'm so excited to be back. So thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.